Okay, so welcome. I have for props today just a couple blankets to sit on. So maybe 2 or 3 just like blankets around the house or yoga blankets. And then a block if you have one, or if you don't have one, it's okay, because this class is kind of accessible. You don't necessarily need props. And I have been starting my classes actually sitting on my blankets in this kind of funky way where I turn them so that there's a point, and it's like a little bicycle seat. And so I kind of sit on it like so with the legs off to the side, and then you can cross your legs and come into a comfortable seat. So whatever works for you, just kind of find your way onto some props to a place where your knees kind of are lower than your hips. So the angle of the thigh is going down rather than coming up. And you can sit with the legs crossed in Sukhasana, crossing the legs maybe at the ankles or Sukhasana. You could cross the legs at the shins if you want a little bit more. This is a hip class, so if you want to do a little more hip work, you can cross the legs at the shins and have the feet underneath the knees. And we'll just take a moment here to arrive in this class, in your yoga practice. You can close your eyes if you're comfortable to do so. Rest your hands on your knees or your thighs. And let the elbows drop, let them hang loose at your sides. When you're ready, take a nice, deep, long inhale through the nose. And then sigh it out the mouth on the exhale. And then one more time, inhaling through the nose. And sighing it out on an exhale. You can gently lift your shoulders up to your ears. And then roll the shoulder blades down the back. Crown of your head reaching toward the ceiling, and the back of your neck is long. You can take the palms together and bring the hands to your chest in prayer position. And we'll start this class today with the sound of Om, just one Om. If you want to join in, you can join in. Otherwise, you can just sit quietly and listen. So we'll take one inhale and exhale to prepare, and then we'll inhale and do an Om together. So for a breath to prepare, taking a nice inhale. And a full exhale. And an inhale. On your next exhale, you can gently bow your head, bring the chin to the chest. Head to your hands, intellect to intuition. And when you're ready, you You can release your hands down to your legs. Gently lift your head and softly open your eyes. Go ahead and switch the cross of your legs. So you'll have one leg that's in front. So we're just gonna sit back and switch the cross. So the opposite leg now is in front. I'm just gonna turn my music down a little bit. And we're gonna come into Parvatasana, or the little mountain pose. So I have to remember what leg. So for the little mountain pose, we're going to interlock your fingers and then press the palms away from you. And when the palms are pressed away, spread through the heels of your hands. You want to make your hands as flat as possible. If there was a wall in front of you, you would have your hands flat against the wall. So check to see that your knuckles, the knuckles of the fingers, are in line with the wrists rather than here or here. And so we'll take the hands up overhead, and I just want to state now that, this is your practice and your body, and you know it best. So if you have any pain as your arms go up, I want you to stop. And you can either leave the hands part way up, or you can have your hands here. Otherwise, you can come all the way up, and also recognizing that if you've been told by a doctor or physical therapist or another yoga teacher to make modifications to honor that during this class. So in this position, we're going to lift the sides of the waist. We're going to grow long through the sides of the waist. And then lift the front of the armpit. So front of the armpit comes up, but that doesn't mean that the shoulders pop up. So shoulder blades go down the back and the front of the armpit lifts. And then we'll take the hands back down. And we'll switch the interlace of the fingers. So you had one index finger on the outside last time, so we're going to switch so the opposite index finger is on the outside. Press the palms away, spread through the heels of the hands, and then as far as is comfortable in your body, take the arms up overhead. Lift the front of the armpits and take the shoulder blades down the back. Grow long through the sides of your waist. Breathe. My video is Zoom does the opposite. Sorry. And then we'll let the arms come back down. So from here, you can just go ahead and push your props to the back, just a smidge. Just out of the way so that you can sit right on the mat. And we're going to take the feet on the floor and the knees bent so that your legs are out in front of you, kind of like this. And this is just a hip exercise. So this will kind of warm us up for the class. So you have options during this exercise. You could have your hands up overhead. You could have your hands on your hips, or you could have your hands on the floor. You might start with one, hands on the floor, and then maybe shift to hands on the hips or hands overhead. So what we're gonna do is first turn your knees over to one side. So that one knee is gonna touch the heel of the other foot like this, right? And then we go back and we roll the other way. So you might say like, oh, this could be kind of fun to try it with my arms up. So we'll just go back and forth here. And when you come to your final position, you're lifting the front of the armpit, shoulder blades down the back, sideways so long. And then you switch, and then come here. Same thing applies if your hands are on your hips. Same thing if your hands are on the ground. So just going back and forth a few times, and then eventually you might want to add in popping up. So you have a shin that's kind of perpendicular to your body, and you're popping up. And then we're going to come to the other side and pop up, and then set down. And just go back and forth like this. Just a few times. And I move forward. So you might move forward too. You might be like, I'm moving in my space, what's going on? And then after you've done both sides an even number of times, as well as you're aware, you can come back to center. And we're gonna find our blanket stack again. Maybe in that little bicycle seat, if you wanna try that out. Find the blanket stack, and we're gonna come into a wide-legged seat. This is Upavishta Konasana. So take the legs out to the sides, and I think I can take my socks off now. So take your feet out to the sides. It can be kind of nice if you're sitting in the very middle of your mat, because you could have both heels in the corners. I'm not in the perfect center of my mat. But it gives you a little indication of how open your hips are today, perhaps. Also knowing that your wide-legged seat will look very different than mine. We're all different bodies, so your legs might be closer together in this, or they might even be farther apart. Take your hands, take your fingertips, the little pads of the fingertips, and we're going to tent the hands and just place them next to your sides on the floor, next to your bum, elbows pointing to the back of the room. And then just grow long and tall here. Same thing as we did in the beginning of class. Lift the front of the armpits, shoulder blades down the back. In Upavishta Konasana, it is sometimes it happens that the back of the knee can drop to the floor, making the legs kind of like bowed. So to avoid that, you're just going to press very gently down into the heels. Pressing into the heels can help to activate the muscles of the legs. Some of you might have practiced yoga where they've told you to lift the kneecaps, right? And all that means, lifting the kneecaps, is that you're engaging the muscles in the top of the thigh. And this is going to protect the back of the knee. We'll just start with a couple of twists. So when you're ready, you can twist to one side. You can take a hand to either side of your leg. Turn the torso toward that foot. And we'll come back to center. And go ahead and twist to the other side. It's just a gentle twist. We don't need to go too far. And come back to center. I don't know if my friend Jenny made it to this, but there was to be a young child taking my yoga class tonight. So I thought that a little bit of kids yoga might be fun for all of us. So with your legs like this, we're going to make a pizza together. And to make the pizza, the first thing we need is to grab our dough. So you're going to turn off to the side and grab an imaginary ball of dough. Plunk it down in front of you. And spread that dough. Spread it wide, spread it long. Make it all into this big pizza wedge, right? Really working the dough all the way. Maybe you want to get around the edge there. Just Go really slow and then maybe do the edge of the pizza crust. And then we need to grab some sauce, I believe. So you can say, oh, here's the sauce behind me. Open the sauce and dump it down. And then spread the sauce. If this doesn't work for you, you could just do some folds. That's fine. Get that sauce. Now we're going to grab some cheese. Oh, here's the cheese. And then you just sprinkle some cheese. Sprinkle the cheese. A good amount of cheese. Any other toppings that you have, you might want to say, oh gosh, I got to reach that spot. A little bit of toppings for my pizza. And there we have it, a beautiful pizza. If you would like to pause, maybe in a forward fold here, you can do that now. Maybe you can only go this far, maybe walking the fingertips out, folding forward, keeping that gentle downward pressure into the heels. And then gently coming back up to a seat. Coming now into Baddha Konasana. If you know that you have some pain in the knees, or just want to be careful with your knees tonight, as we go into Baddha Konasana, what I would recommend is grabbing underneath the back of the knee with both hands, bending the knee, taking it in to the chest like this, and then you can grab the ankle. And we're just going to rotate the leg like this. So as opposed to just hopping in like that, this is just a little bit more of a careful way. And it's letting all of the rotation be in the hip rather than in the knee, if you do it this way. So we're going to come into Baddha Konasana. This means that the soles of the feet are together. The knees are wide. You can have the heels as close to your pelvis as you want to have, as is comfortable in your body. Maybe have your hands on the feet like as if you were to open a book. If you want to add a little extra here, you can imagine that you're energetically drawing the knees away from one another. So just see what that does in your body. If you want to kind of pull the knees away from one another, just notice that that might make a little bit more space. And then we'll do some neck rolls from this position. So drop your chin to your chest. And then take the left ear over toward the left shoulder. Taking the head back ever so slightly. The face lifts up toward the sky and release the jaw, let it hang. Get a little drool going there. And then we'll take the head back forward, bringing the chin to the chest, coming through center. And then go to do the other side, taking the opposite ear to the opposite shoulder. Head tilts back ever so slightly, face turns up toward the sky. Relax the jaw, maybe wiggle it a little bit side to side. And then we'll take the head back down, chin to the chest. And on your next inhale, lift the head up, lift the gaze up. You can take the knees together and stretch the legs long. We'll go ahead and move these props out of the way now. preparing for Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog. Come onto your hands and knees. Coming onto hands and knees, you can have the wrists a little bit in front of the shoulders and the knees a little bit behind the hips. We want to have our pointer fingers facing forward. So you'll notice a kind of a J shape or a reverse J between your thumb and your pointer finger. Spread wide through the fingers. Spread the fingers wide. Plant those palms firmly into the ground. And as we go into this downward facing dog, see if you can play around with changing the weight that is on your hands. You can do it right now. Putting the weight into your pointer finger and your thumb, and maybe taking it out of the wrist. Go ahead and curl your toes under, press your hips back. Take your feet as wide as the edges of your mat if you're practicing on a mat today. And then bend the knees. We're going to come all the way up onto the tiptoes. So your hips are moving way up and back. Weight of the hands is in the fingers, more so than in the wrist. Now with your hips going up and back here, you can start to slowly straighten the legs and then take your heels toward the floor, only so much that you can keep the hips moving up and back. So you'll notice maybe there's a point where your hips start to drop. So keep the hips going up and back and then take the heels toward the floor. If your heels can reach the floor, you can use the pressure of your heels on the floor to lift the hips up. Otherwise, maybe keep the heels lifted and the hips lifted. And we'll bring the knees wide, big toes together. Bring your hips over the heels, coming into a child's or a downward facing hero's pose. Bring the forehead to the floor and the arms out in front of you. Preparing now to come back up into downward facing dog. Curl the toes under, press the hips up and back. This time, take the feet together. Feet together, heels together, legs together. We're going to come into Ekapada Adho Mukha Svanasana, or one-legged downward facing dog on both sides, right and left. So we'll start with the right leg. You'll go ahead and send the right leg behind you. So you don't have to have it way up high, that's okay. You can have it just sort of straight back. We're going to extend out through the heel of that right leg, and then take the inner thigh of your right leg and turn it up toward the ceiling. Notice the standing leg, take the inner thigh of your left leg and turn it toward the back of the room, or behind you, I should say. Breathe. And then take the right foot down to meet the left. We're going to come into Ekapada Adho Mukha Svanasana on the other side. This time pressing the left foot back behind you. Again, it doesn't have to be way up in the sky. Take the inner thigh of the left foot. We're going to rotate it so it's going up toward the ceiling. And then the inner thigh of the right leg, the leg that's on the ground, is rotating behind you. Take the left leg down so both feet are together. We're going to take the knees wide, big toes together. Bring your hips over the heels and come to rest. Downward facing hero's pose or child's pose. Forehead to the floor. And then eventually we'll come up. We're going to come up to all fours, to a tabletop. This is the moment you have all been waiting for, the sleeping pigeon. So, to prepare today to get into our sleeping pigeon, you're going to lift your right knee and take the right knee to the outside of the right wrist. And then the foot of the right of the right leg will be near your left knee. Okay? Then what we're going to do is you're going to stretch. Oops, maybe you want to be in a different place on your mat. You're going to extend the left leg out behind you. So straighten the left leg, straightening the knee, bringing the knee to the floor, bringing the top of the thigh to the floor as much as possible. And we can pause here in our pigeon. Now, for me, my butt is kind of like way up in the sky, my right hip or butt cheek. So I take a blanket and I sort of set it under there. So I would recommend using a prop if your bottom is also kind of up in the air. If you have full pigeon in your practice, you can absolutely do something like bending the left knee here, reaching back with the right hand, grabbing the inside of the left ankle. And then if you want, you could, I can't do full pigeon. Otherwise, I'm going to encourage a sleeping pigeon. So to come into the sleeping pigeon, you can come down onto the forearms if that's available. Basically, you stop wherever you want to stop. So if it's with your hands on the floor, you could stop there. You could stop with your forearms on the floor. Or you could come all the way down, bringing your forehead to the floor. When you're ready, you can gently press yourself up, nice and slow, coming to pause with your hands on the floor, maybe removing the prop. And then we're going to work your way out of that configuration and come back to all fours. Let's do the other side this time taking the left knee to the outside of the left wrist, and the left foot can be somewhere near the right knee. You're going to stretch the right leg behind you, straightening the knee of the right leg that's out behind you, and bringing the top of the thigh toward the floor. You'll notice that mine doesn't get there. So, no one's perfect. So yours might not get there as well. Some people practice pigeon with the front shin, right, perpendicular to the body. But I'm having you do a slightly easier version today, a little bit more accessible, that front leg on an angle. And again, if you want to practice, a fuller expression of the posture, you can absolutely bend the right knee. You could grab back with the left hand and grab the inner ankle of the right leg. If you were stable here, you could lift the opposite arm up off the ground. Otherwise, go ahead and place that prop under your hip if your hip is popped up in the air. And then we're going to work our way into that sleeping pigeon. Noticing that each side of the body is going to be different. So this side might be easier, it might be harder than the last. Coming all the way down into the farthest, deepest posture you can find today. In yoga, we don't want to have any sharp pains, any pings or dings of pain. But an aching stretch is something you can breathe into, you can back off of, and then maybe you can go back into it. So just noticing the difference between what is pain and what is a stretch. Never pushing yourself too hard. And nice and slow, you can gradually bring yourself back up. And come on out of the posture. Woo! Let's come back to all fours. From this pigeon, we're going to just come into a quick downward facing dog. So take the palms a little bit in front of the shoulders, spread wide through the fingers, curl those toes under, and press your hips back. Let's just come into a little downward facing dog for a moment here. And then you're going to walk your hands towards your feet. So you could take the legs wide, maybe, and then just walk the hands toward the feet, coming into a forward fold. So if you notice, if you know you have tight hamstrings, maybe bending the knees here. Taking the elbows in your hands, crossing the arms, maybe swaying side to side. And then when you're ready, you can go ahead and bend the knees slightly, bring your hands to your hips, press through your feet, and come all the way up to stand. And I come now into some standing postures. So this is where you might want to have a block handy. If you do have a block at home, it's also totally fine if you do not. You're going to step the feet wide, coming into Prasarita Paratanasana, or wide-legged standing fold here. And it's kind of fun to take your heels to the very back edge of your mat. We'll sort of like show you as we move through postures how much maybe you move. And I know that you won't be able to see my head, so I've made a plan for this. I just need my block. I'll come back here. Okay, so toes are pointing forward, the legs are wide. If you were to stretch your hands out, the feet are going to come kind of underneath your wrists today. Take your hands to the hips. You can have a slight bend in the knees if you want. And we're going to hinge at the pit of the hip crease, the pit of the hip. We're going to hinge forward. Keep the chest lifted as you come forward. And then you can bring your hands to something. So If you're very stiff, you might like to use a chair here or a table, a small table. You could use a block as well. You can bring the hands to a block. The block has many different settings. I've often recommended using a small dog, though they're known to move. A small child, or you can take your hands to the floor. I'm just going to pause here in this fold. And if you want, you can go ahead and drop the head. So bringing the crown of your head toward the floor. Starting to round the back a little bit. And take your gaze between the hands. Hands to the hips, and we'll come all the way up to stand. I'm going to come into Utthita Trikonasana, or extended triangle now. To do our extended triangle today, you're going to take the left toes in slightly. So your left toes will come in maybe a 45 to 60 degree angle. And then, this is a little funky, but with the right foot, you're going to pivot it so the right heel comes back and the right toes go forward. So what ends up happening here is that the heel of the right foot is in line with the big toe, the very top of the big toe of the left foot. So if you drew a line from the inner heel of your right foot, it would hit the top of the toe on the left foot. So then you can have hands on the hips. You can face forward here. I'm going to shift the hips to the left. So send the hips, and I realize that I'm backwards. So just whatever side you're doing, send the hips out. And then extend the right arm over the right leg. And we're going to reach toward the right, grow long. And then you can eventually come down. If you don't have a block and you can't get your hand to the floor, you can put your hand on your shin. If you have a block, you can take the block to the outside of the ankle. You take the hand to the block. Take that left hip, you're going to pull that left hip back. So the outer left hip hooks back and the outer right hip hooks forward. And then if you would like, you can extend the left hand up, overhead, shoulders in line. And if it's available in your body, you could take the gaze up to the sky. And then bring the gaze back, center, left hand to the left hip. And we'll come up to stand. And then we'll do the other side. So come to have both toes pointing forward. And then we'll do the other side. So if you didn't get the left and the right correct, that's totally fine. Just switch to which side you didn't do. Take your right toes in slightly, 45 to 60 degree angle. And then move that left heel, pivot the left heel so that the inner left heel is in line with the top of the right toe. This just makes the stance a little bit shorter when we do it this way. Hands to the hips if you want. You can jut that hip out like you're a moody teenager. Take your left hand, reach it out to the left. We're going to extend out to the left, growing long, 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 and then taking that left hand down either to the shin, to the floor, to a block. Take the outer right hip and hook it back behind you. Take the outer left hip and draw it forward. This is squaring the hips. So it's a little bit easier to imagine it one side at a time. Then if you want, you can take the right hand up overhead. Oops, you can have the shoulders in line. Shoulders are stacked. And if it's available in your neck, if it feels comfortable, you can take the gaze up to the sky. Otherwise, you can keep your gaze forward. Keep that right hip moving back, left hip moving forward. And take the right hand to the right hip. We're going to come out the same way that we came in. Take both toes pointing forward. And then you can jump or step the feet together. We'll just stand for a moment in Tadasana. You can take the feet together, legs together, hands at your sides, kind of on an angle here, like you're a rocket about to take off. Lift the front of the armpit, shoulder blades down the back, back of the neck long, crown of the head reaching to the ceiling. And then we'll find our way back to a seated position on your mat. You might like to have those props again to sit on that we had in the beginning of class. I'm going to sit on them this way this time instead of the bicycle seat. I'm going to come into the fire log pose, which I had to look up the Sanskrit because it is crazy. It's Agnistambhasana. Agnistambhasana is the fire log. So for the fire log pose, now it might not be comfortable if you have sensitive knees. So I want to propose that for this final posture, if you have sensitive knees, you might want to just do a forward fold. That could be more comfortable. So that would be sitting here, the legs out in front, hinging at the hips, lifting the chest forward, and then folding forward, maybe even bending knees so that you can bring the stomach onto the thighs. So that's option number one if you have sensitive knees. Option number two is to try the fire log posture. So for fire log, you can start with the left leg in front. So you're going to take the left shin and have it so it's parallel with the long edge of the mat. In front of you, we're going to flex through the left foot. And then with the right foot, so you want to get the legs so that they're parallel. So your shins are parallel. So what you could do is you could set the right foot in front. This is option number one. Setting the right foot in front, right knee rests on the left foot. Option number two is you would take the left or the right heel on top of the left knee. So your knees and heels are stacked with each other. The shins are parallel. Both feet are flexed. That protects the knee. And we'll be here. So you'll find the position that feels best for your body today. And we'll just start by sitting tall. You can do that thing where we tent the fingers. Place the fingers on the floor at your sides, elbows point back behind you. And then just go ahead and lift the chest, lift the front of the armpits, shoulder blades down the back. You're nice and tall and long through the spine. And then we'll add a fold. So your fold, you might stay here. You might say, this is enough for my hip today. You might bring your fingers to the floor and slowly walk the fingertips out. You might be able to go all the way down. I'm not there. That's not me. I think this is where I am today. Just breathing into the tight places. Backing off when it becomes too much. Breathing spaciousness into your hips, into your body. The hips are a place where we store a lot of emotion. So it could make sense that they might get a little tight sometimes. Holding things together. Slowly walking yourself back up to an upright position if you're not there already. And then we're going to uncross the legs and work your way to the other side. This time having the right shin so that it is parallel with the long edge of the mat. And the foot is flexed. And then maybe the left foot is sitting in front. Maybe the left foot is stacked. If you knew that your knees were a little tender, or maybe the first time the knees were too tender, you can just do that forward fold. That's forward fold. You're always welcome to bend those knees if you have tight hamstrings. Fire log pose. Agnistambasana, or Agnistambasana, as we're supposed to say. When you're ready, you can go ahead and make it into a fold, coming only as deep as is comfortable in your body, folding forward as far as you can, keeping a lift of the chest. As if your chest was like a flashlight in the nighttime, right? Shining in front of you like a headlight. You don't want to turn it in, make it dark, keep it shining out. And slowly walk your way back up to sitting. And then gently uncross the legs, maybe taking a moment to just sort of shake them out a little bit. That's in your practice. And we're going to come down onto your back, getting ready for getting close to the final relaxation here. So I'm going to go ahead and take this blanket and have it underneath my head because that's fine. So like a little pillow. So just a folded blanket under the head, maybe grabbing some layers. Here, if you want to grab socks, or you're in your home, so you could have a cozy blanket. You could put on a sweater. You could dim the lights. I can get the music here for Shavasana. So before we get into our final relaxation, just going to take Supta Baddha Konasana. So you'll come onto your back and you can bring your head to that prop, to the blanket. If you have a blanket, the top of that blanket, the folded edge of the blanket roll stack is going to be near the tops of your shoulders, but your shoulders are not on the blanket. So your head and your neck, the back of the neck, will be resting on the blanket. And then you can take the knees wide and the soles of the feet together. So we did Baddha Konasana in the beginning of class, seated, and this is a Supta, reclining Baddha Konasana. You might want to have a prop. It could be more comfortable for you to have props under your knees. So feel free to rest a block under the knee. And we're just going to be here for a few moments. You're welcome to stay in Baddha Konasana if you want for the final relaxation. So you can do whatever you need to do to get yourself comfortable. But we'll just take a few breaths here. Taking nice deep breaths in and out of the nose. Just gonna This posture is very good for digestion. If you have some stomach issues, this can be a great pose for an upset stomach. When you're ready, if you would like to, you can stretch the legs long, coming into your final Shavasana. You're always welcome to stay in Baddha Konasana. You stretch the legs long, you can let the feet flop out to either side, palms facing up at your sides. Take a nice deep inhale through the nose, filling your lungs all the way up. And then sigh it out on the exhale. And we'll do this one more time. Maybe even making some noise on your exhale. So inhaling through the nose. And then letting it all out on the exhale, out the mouth. Let everything go. Gently bring your awareness back into your body. Noticing the inhale and the exhale. Wiggling fingers and toes. When you're ready, you can take your right hand, right arm up overhead. Roll over onto the right side, resting your head on your upper arm for a moment. Before pressing yourself up into a seat. Take the palms together, bring your hands to your chest, prayer position. We'll close class today with the sound of Om. Taking a breath to prepare. Nice long inhale. Nice full exhale. Then inhaling through the nose. Bow your head to your hands. With gratitude for yourself coming to yoga practice tonight. And gratitude for your body, for all that it does for you today and every day. Namaste. Thank you so much for coming to my free yoga class tonight. Just gonna stop the recording here.